Okay, I think we're about ready. This morning, Isha Judd is considered an ambassador for peace by international leaders of opinion. She is viewed as a modern-day visionary and is the author of Love Has Wings and Why Walk When You Can Fly. She travels the globe showing individuals how to find the state of being she calls love consciousness. Please help me give a warm welcome to Isha Judd. Oh, I thought you had one.
No, it's fine. Like this, I'm fine. Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. You know, it was interesting then when you were all sharing, you know, your wake-up call. The instant thing I see is how vulnerability always connects humans. As soon as we share, we become vulnerable, and instantly our hearts open and we connect. And I think that's a very large part of my teaching, the capacity to be vulnerable and to recognize that our humanity and also what underlies our humanity is that unconditional love that's always present. And yes, I travel the world and I talk about world peace being the responsibility of each human through the evolution of our own consciousness and coming back to our true essence, our true nature, which I believe is the one thing that unites us all, and that is the experience of love consciousness. So I'm going to share with you my story. I didn't share it at the table. And then I'm going to tell you about my system, how I've stabilized a permanent experience of peace and joy through the focus on love consciousness. And through that experience, learnt to love myself unconditionally and, as a consequence, give that love unconditionally. Because once you are in touch with that source, everything flows from that internal abundance. If I make up some very strange words, it's because I live in South America, and sometimes the Spanish infiltrates my English, so you'll just have to work it out for yourself. I live in Uruguay. I flew in yesterday. Most of my work is based in South America. I travel constantly through South America and Mexico. I teach through my foundation, we teach in high security prisons. We teach people that have come through, difficult situations like the earthquakes in Chile, people that are being reinserted from the guerrilla warfare in Colombia. We teach all sorts of different people from low income, people with drug addictions. We're constantly traveling and teaching, as well as teaching people such as yourselves and myself that, get to a point in our lives where we're looking for something more, something that's more complete and more permanent. But I'm going to tell you my story and then I'll get on to that. Okay, so when I was a child, I have a clear memory of thinking that there was something terribly wrong. Like, I didn't understand what this all meant. I used to look at adults and look at the television and I think, I didn't understand violence, I didn't understand prejudice, I didn't understand why people are always arguing or being cruel to animals or cruel to each other. And I felt like I lived in a fog. And I thought if I could just discover the code to understand the meaning of life. I always had these questions. I was very fortunate. I had an incredible family. They were humanitarians. They were very progressive in their thinking. They were spiritual in their own way. My mother was a very Christian and my father was a Mason, Freemason, and spiritual as well. But they put a lot of effort into not imposing their ideas on me. They wanted me to evolve and have my own opinions, my own experiences, and come to my own decisions. So I was surrounded with an abundance of love, and I was a very fortunate child. Now, when I was 4 years old, my mother came up to me and she started telling me how special I was. I remember it very clearly. And then after giving me this great discourse about how special I was, she said, oh, and by the way, you're adopted. And I was like, I didn't know what it meant, but I knew I entered a place of panic internally because I thought, yeah, I'm really special. And then I felt like an orphan puppy, you know. It was like, oh, what does that mean? And I didn't know what it meant, but it frightened me. And in that moment, I did this. And I remember clearly the feeling of internal panic, and also I can't trust the people I love because they lie to me. So I blocked that out of my mind and started to grow up. And I was very much a political activist. Like, I was always trying to change the world. I was always marching for something. Uranium mining, save the whales, save this, save that. Always involved in changing the world. You know, that was my focus because there was something terribly wrong. I had to fix the world. And I was very annoying at school. I went to a very toffee ladies' college, and I was always the one with all the questions, annoying all the teachers, questioning everything. But I was, you know, relatively well behaved apart from that. So I started to grow up, and I got to a point in my life where I thought that all this idealism didn't belong to the real world. Like, it just, there's no way you could change the world. And I got to the point where I actually didn't want to anymore. And I had two passions. My first passion was humanity, and my second passion was horses. I loved horses. And the horses won. I left school and I became a racehorse trainer, which was never heard of. Firstly, because I'm 50 years old, that was a while ago. And secondly, women just didn't do that. But that's what I did. I started breaking in horses. I went into the racing industry. It's a very big industry in Australia. It's one of the principal industries. And I was very successful. I made a lot of money. I had a very famous boyfriend. I had all the prestige, all the, you know, social standing that one could wish for. I was the perfect little yuppie and doing very well. And when I turned 28, the universe said, that's it, you know, here it stops, kiddo. You know, the perfect little yuppie fell. There was a huge financial crash in Australia. I know you understand how that is. And then the rug got pulled and everything external was taken from me. 6 members of my closest family died, and I lost all my money, my career. Everything that gave me external security was literally gone. My father died, my boyfriend died, my both grandmothers died, my mother had a massive brain stroke. I had nothing external to hold on to. And in hindsight, it was the best year of my life. But when I was in the middle of it, obviously I was lost, you know, because everything I thought I was gone. Everything external that defined me no longer existed. And I literally had nothing. So I did what all good Australians do to solve their deepest problems. I got drunk, very drunk, for quite an extended period of time. I think it was like 12 months. And I thought, no, this isn't working either. And I started to look, you know, and of course when you're ready, the door gets knocked on, no? People started to appear in my life, and it started to change my perspective. Firstly, I thought spirituality was really weird. I thought it was with people with problems. But at this moment, I had come to realise that I was one of those people, so I had to do something completely different. And so I started to change. And I changed, and I changed, and I reconstructed my life with more balance, like not so obsessed with success and money and image, but still it was there, like a normal life. But I got to a point where I could see that I had such a profound fear of abandonment because of my adoption. And I could see that that fear of abandonment marked everything I did. I'd stay in relationships that possibly didn't serve completely. I'd play small so that other people felt comfortable. I was always compromising in my life, and my fear of abandonment was so strong because I always had this fear that I'd be abandoned or people would die. And I got to a point where I didn't want the external to control my happiness. I wanted to be complete within myself. Now, you couldn't tell. I had a great image. I looked powerful, confident, all of those things, and successful. But inside, there was a really frightened child that was just controlling everything, but really controlling it. And I was good at controlling everything. And I got to a point through another breakdown in a relationship, and that's when I had the voice in my head, or my heart, that said, it's time to wake up. You can't live with these dramas. You can't keep suffering because of what someone else is doing. There has to be something more. And I knew there was something more. I always knew there was something more. I always listened to the Bible and the teachings of Jesus, and I believed in this place of unconditional love. I didn't know what it was, but I believed it. And I started looking for that. So I started to go in, and my system is about what I did. And I started to go inside very profoundly, and I realized that at the bottom of everything, I didn't love myself. People used to say to me, you need to love yourself more. And I go, oh, great, but what does that mean? And no one knew what it meant. They'd say, but you need to do that. They didn't know how to do it. No one was doing it. And then I realized that when I went in and I got to the bottom, all my success and achievements was to prove that I had worth. I didn't love myself. I didn't feel good enough. And it shocked me. It really shocked me. And I started to go in and I started to feel, but profoundly. And as I started to feel, I started to find this place inside of me is what I call love consciousness. Now, when I was focusing inwards, I was experiencing it. And then as I started to move more of my story and my suffering and my self-abandonment, because it was always self-abandonment, this energy started to grow. And this energy started to become the most important thing in my life. Because initially, my addictions were the most important thing, or my suffering was the most important thing. I was always leading towards that direction. And when I found this, I started to let go of everything that didn't serve this energy to keep expanding and growing. And it started to grow and grow and grow until it became a permanent experience. I live in the present moment. I'm an extraordinarily busy woman, like an executive, I guess. I fly to different countries all the time. I have centres that I'm running. I have 30 people that work with me as an incredible team. We live together and we work together. But this experience of love and external perfection evolving is my constant experience. And I know, or I feel, because I don't like to impose what I feel, but I feel that this is what everyone's looking for. They're looking for this foundation to build their house on, and that foundation is in us. And when we find that unconditional love and we live wrapped in that blanket of unconditional love, the whole world starts to change. It's as if we're looking through a window and everything that transpired is put like black spots all over the window. But as we clean everything internally and come back to a place of emptiness, the window starts to change and we start to see the love externally. We start to see all the beauty instead of constantly focusing on what's wrong or what's missing. And we start to be very present. And when we're present and we start to give praise and gratitude for everything that's around us, it's like everything starts to change, and so dramatically. And then we realise I was never present. I was never in the moment. I was always worrying. I was always chasing an illusion. And the fortunate aspect is that once I find this internal abundance, the external abundance starts to mirror that. Firstly, in my interpersonal relationships, I start to experience this love, because when I heal my internal judgment, the judgment is removed externally, even from the most complicated relationships, and we all have at least one of those, I imagine. Some of us are fortunate to have more. And you start to, it's incredible, because literally when I heal myself, I bring peace to the world. So I teach a system. It's in a book here in the United States. Normally I teach it in person, and it's Why Walk When You Can Fly. And I have centres, and people come to my centres and go inwards and learn the system. And I really feel that it's time for us to let go of victim consciousness and really jump 100% into unified consciousness, into love consciousness. I think the knocking's very strong on the door now for people to change. And that doesn't mean we have to give up anything. We can still have our comfortable modern lives, but have them based in something so profound and so wonderful and so permanent that we wake up every morning full of joy for no reason, and really appreciating ourselves and loving ourselves exactly as we are and evolving from that point. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them the best I can. I really, yes. I must say you really confuse me. I don't know if you're a Russian or an Indian or a member of the Windsor House, or I'm very confused. Don't make the question so complicated,
I'm still
please.
trying to find myself. Okay.
Mm.
You know, it's interesting you say that, because I know it's hard to believe, but I was in the seminary at Notre Dame, and that's the first thing they teach you is to like yourself. And if you don't like yourself, how do you like anybody else?
Exactly.
And so I think you're on the right track.
Thank you.
No, seriously. That's an endorsement.
Thank you.
And what process do you use? Is it meditation, or would you speak to that a little bit?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'm a bit vague. I teach facets. Now, these facets are in that book, and the facets vibrate in unified consciousness. The first facet is praise love for this moment in its perfection, attention in the heart. And when we use these facets, because they vibrate in such a high frequency, everything is that energy, okay? Fear and what we perceive as love. But in reality, it's a dense energy and a high energy. And when we focus on the high energy, because it's very fast, everything moves towards that higher energy. So when I think this facet, or I suppose you'd call it a phrase, it causes this perfect coherency in my brain between the left and right hemisphere. And my body goes into a profound level of rest, and I start to eliminate stress. But I also start to have insights. I start to see myself more clearly. I start to see what I do that sabotages my happiness. I start to see the places where I'm not loving myself. I start to release the pains through emotion. Sometimes I'll be sad, or I'll be angry, or I'll have a memory that's stopping me from looking through my window as being clean, like the dirt patches that are inside of me that are tainting my perception. And when I think the facets, with my eyes closed, I start to heal very rapidly. They work with the thoughts, and they're very simple to do. I also use them when I'm walking around, because I don't know if you know, but humans have approximately 120,000 thoughts a day, maybe between 60 to 120, depending on how stressed you are. And we're never present in the moment. Often we think we are, but we're not. And I use the facets, think the facet, to come into this present moment, and to put my attention here. And I'm cultivating this energy all the time, and it's growing all the time through the use of the facet. So the first part of the system's the facets, eyes closed, eyes open. The second part is to feel and to express what's going on. And then there's more advanced stages of the system, which is to let go of addiction, to let go of attachment, and to always be speaking the truth.
Excuse me for asking this question, because maybe you've said it, but I'm not clear. What exactly is a facet?
The facet is what you think in your mind, okay? So maybe it looks to you like a mantra or something, but it's not. The first facet is praise love for this moment in its perfection. And you close your eyes and you think that. Praise love for this moment in its perfection. And then I put my attention in my heart. And then I have a few thoughts. And then I use it again. That experience is unified consciousness.
So would it be similar to an affirmation? It sounds like it's an
No,
affirmation.
because an affirmation is creating a future moment, creating something that we want in the future. This is a surrender to reality in this moment, to the reality of love in this moment. It's subtle, but it's very strong, the difference. Well, if I close my eyes, I can think it. It's not very exciting. Sure, why not? Only if you give me a chair. Okay, so everyone close your eyes. Now, come on. Don't fight, boys. Okay, so close your eyes. Now, I warn you of one thing in advance. The word perfection, the intellect does not like that word because according to the intellect, we're very imperfect. So I close my eyes and I think, praise love for this moment in its perfection. And then I put my attention in the region of my heart. And I wait and have a couple of thoughts. And very gently, I think, praise love for this moment in its perfection, attention in the heart. I don't strain, I don't control, it's just a gentle thought to add to the other thoughts. Praise love for this moment in its perfection, attention in the heart. Then I wait a few seconds, I have a couple of thoughts, and again, praise love for this moment in its perfection, and put my attention in the heart. You know, it's like the waves at the beach. Slowly they come, slowly they fall, slowly they withdraw. I don't make them come. I don't make them fall. I don't make them withdraw. I just think it gently like that. Praise love for this moment in its perfection. Attention in the heart. Praise love for this moment in its perfection. Attention in the heart. And slowly open your eyes. So in the system you do that for like 20 minutes, but there's 4 facets. And they just take you into that place. And then everything that vibrates in a low frequency starts to move more towards the higher frequency. And you start to transform from the inside. And in reality, it's the only place that true transformation can take place. And then this starts to transform as a consequence. But the beautiful thing about the facets is it very quickly removes everything so you can have that experience while you're walking around with your eyes open. Not just when you have your eyes closed, like in a meditative sort of experience. It's more permanent. And that's the objective with the system I teach, that humans walk around anchored in love consciousness. Yes, more questions.
Okay, is this... I feel wonderful after that little sitting together, and wish that I'd asked this question before because I have almost no question left.
It's
after
great,
that.
isn't it?
But
Consciousness
but I'd like to
nullifies the
go-
brain.
I'd like to go back to early on in your story when you had that personal collapse in your life, and then you said at the end of that, when you were tired of being drunk, you went deep and developed this system. So there was something missing in there for me. In other words, I'm hearing that there was pain, that there was sadness, and these dark things.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever address those things head on, or was it only a matter of allowing the light in? Do you address the sadness as part of the darkness as part of the process, or is there a denial of that and you just kind of eliminate that from the thoughts?
No, the opposite. Okay, so initially, now this is a person that was completely non-spiritual, okay? I was in what I call the illusion and doing everything for success, control, money, a normal life, normal yuppie life. And then when I crashed, I started to do spiritual things, yes. But when I was 39, this was at 28, when I was 36, sorry, that's when, again, I had that need to eliminate the suffering that I was experiencing again, and that's when I went very profoundly inside. Before I just did little bits, like, looking here and looking there, rebirthing, Reiki, different things, but nothing that really was permanent. It was just like, looking around and getting more balance. But when I really healed, I went profoundly inside and with this, and I released everything I was up to here with stress and stuck emotions, probably some resentments, not that I was a very resented sort of person. I was more resented with myself. I was always blaming myself for everything. And I started to empty, and then I started to have this permanent experience of love consciousness. But very fast, this is the thing, we think things take time, but they don't, because when we focus on what's real, the energy, everything, we start creating everything to help us, move forward and to find that permanent place of love. So yes, I cut it a bit short maybe. But no, I went through a process. The system is the process I did. That process when I started, 11 months, was very quick. And I was very focused. And I made a decision, I didn't want that anymore. I didn't want to have fear. I wanted to live internally in freedom, and I completely committed myself to that growth. And of course I'm evolving. We're eternal students, yes?
This seems really exciting to me, and my mind is just rushing around here. I'm hearing quantum physics. I'm hearing all of the different religions that focus on love and peace, essentially. Whatever religion, that's the core. And it feels to me like you have pulled all of that together, and you don't have to worry about which religion is right, and you don't have to, it's like everything you learn about vibration and psychology, and it seems so condensed into this very non-religious, spiritual thing. And I'm just real excited about it.
Great.
Do you want to comment on that?
Yes. All religions have one pure belief system, and that is, that they all agree on, and that is God is love, yes? Every religion agrees with that. And humans, we get so lost in our ideas, and we're so full. And when we start to empty, and we come back to the one thing that underlies, that's present in everyone, we realize that all the masters were saying the same thing. Jesus was saying the same thing. Buddha was saying the same thing. Krishna was saying the same thing. But we got so attached to the form that often we lost the essence. Not completely. I'm not criticizing anyone. That's another thing I never do. I see the perfection in everything we do and did. And we're just coming, when you focus on the highest point, which is the love, everything falls into place. You know, we have this idea that everything has to be complex, but actually the joy's in the innocence. Because when we were children, we were happy. We were perfectly innocent, we were joyful, we didn't have judgments, we didn't, you know, have the eye of criticism. We just loved. We had our emotions, we were vulnerable, and we were also very human, you know. We were jealous, we did this, we did that, but we didn't judge it. And I think is that there's many different types of people. Some of us that try so hard to be good, and we're always doing this to ourselves because nothing's ever good enough. And others that are trying to do everything bad and blame the good people. You know, but ultimately we all want the same thing. We want love. That's all humans want. Yes.
So I'm kind of curious, this is not a very deep question, but I'm curious how you and Andrew drew this connection.
Who's Andrew?
Well, Arthur, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
Arthur, sorry.
Arthur.
I was thinking, ooh, I don't know about Andrew.
Yeah, this is deeper than I thought. But I was just curious because we were talking to him, and I was just curious about how part of your spiritual evolution was meeting Arthur, and how what connection did he have in your life at that time that you met him?
None. I didn't know who he was. I was in Venezuela. I got invited to South America, and it was amazing for me because the minute I turned up in Venezuela, I walked into a room and there was 200 people, and I started teaching my system. And in South America, this just exploded, but really. And it became so big that I couldn't do it by myself, and so I started to train teachers. And Arthur was one of my very first teachers. He was very focused on consciousness, on enlightenment, on what we do, you know, and I met him there. He came from India. He was in India with people that knew me, and then he came to Venezuela. I now have 30 teachers that work with me and run the centres, and they're all phenomenal people. I couldn't do this by myself. They support everyone that comes to the centres, and you know, so I have a big group of people working with me permanently in Mexico and in Uruguay. Yes.
Well, first, I'm delighted to hear that this is just going viral in South America. That's fabulous. I've been all around South America when I was younger, and so I have a lot of heart for that region of the world. I work with couples.
Mm-hmm.
I can see that even in a session, this could help kind of calm down the amygdala and calm down the nervous system so that they could listen to one another.
Mm-hmm.
But anything else beyond this when working with a couple? I mean, obviously, I worked with them for years, so I know a lot, but can you maybe give me something that would translate right into a session?
Well, what I do, I have a lot of people coming as couples that are on the brink of divorce, and I think the thing is that we get to hear with resentment and judgment, and the thing that initially was love, often we've removed ourselves and we have these prefixed ideas of how each other is. It's like, oh, yes, he's always like that, or if he does something wrong, then you have the list of everything he did wrong and you throw it all up in his face. And what I teach is that, firstly, each person's responsible unto themselves. So they have to go in and heal. And it's not about the couple, it's about each individual being transparent, being vulnerable, speaking their truth, and the other one listening while they move it all, and instead of taking it as criticism, just to see that you're serving that person to eliminate everything that's in them. Because ultimately, couples are mirrors. You know, that's why when we first meet, it's all romance and flowers, and then after 6 months, things start annoying you. But as you heal yourself, it's true, no? And it happens faster now, it's impressive. Zero tolerance. And as we heal ourselves, and through that vulnerability, both parts being vulnerable, we start to see how superficial all the control and all the ideas and all the rubbish was, and we start to reconnect with the basis of the relationship, which is the love. and the love was always present. And it's with all relationships. You know, I always tell my students it's so important to heal the family, because really the family is our initial mirrors. And even if a member of your family doesn't live anymore, it's a big part of you that has to be healed so you can find the internal union. And the parents are a big part of that. And often, and the children, they mirror that part as well. So it's about healing myself so that I can perceive perfection from the heart, which is a unity. It's not that you necessarily have to like what everyone does, but the judgment falls, because judgment ultimately affects us. You know, if I have resentment, it doesn't affect the person I'm resented with, it affects me. If I have judgment, it affects me. So it's about becoming empty. And yes, the most important thing is to listen. You know, we always feel attacked or criticised. You know, I'm not good enough, you're saying I'm not validated. And we get offended as individuals, and we get offended as countries. Like, we just get offended. I'm right, you're wrong. Yes.
You brought up a couple of times the word perfection, and that the mind doesn't like it, and that seems to be an area where I don't connect with my spiritual friends and a lot of people that are on many spiritual paths and New Age paths. And how much less powerful is it to change that word perfection? Because yes, my mind objects to the word because I think it's sort of like saying Santa Claus. It's, in my mind, it's not true. Yet,
You don't believe in Santa Claus?
I don't believe in Santa Claus.
What's
Darn.
happening to America?
It's terrible. And I see how much more powerful the word is. I do get that that is the most powerful place to live, in seeing perfection in the things that, you know, may not be so great. And yet, to me, that's just fooling ourselves, and it's a semantic issue. But what is wrong, or how much less powerful is it to simply say, oh, find the beauty in a situation, as opposed to calling it perfect? Because in my mind, I'm going, that wasn't perfect, you know, and yes, I can make lemonade out of those lemons, yet, you know, so.
I can answer this very clearly. In this world of duality, our minds will never perceive perfection, because the intellect is absolutely exists to sustain the duality. Good, bad, right, wrong, black, white. But what if this was a perfect illusion of duality, and the love was always present? And the more I focus on the love, the more present the love becomes, until it evolves to such a point that the surface judgments and ideas start to dissolve. And as a consequence, everything that I perceive as bad, like victim consciousness, injustice, poverty, rape, violence, all of those things, obviously we don't want those in our world. But if I focus on the highest point, I'm pulling everything towards that point. If I focus on what's wrong, I'm taking everything towards that. So I choose to focus on what I want. And that's not meaning I'm ignorant and living in a cloud or believing in Santa Claus. It means that's my focus, and through that focus I will address everything else. The intellect will always find what's wrong. So I have to witness the intellect from the bigger brain, and the biggest brain is the heart. The heart unifies me with totality, and there's no judgment in the heart. And that doesn't mean I'm passive and I don't want things to change, but I'm not suffering or focusing on the negativity so that I can't change, because ultimately I have to change. And the heart's joyful, it's peaceful, it's unified, it's abundant, it's in the present moment. There's nothing missing in the heart. In the head, things are good, things are bad, things are right, things are wrong. I need to protect, I have to control, I shouldn't flow because something might happen. The intellect is always holding me in that duality. And it doesn't mean you become like stupid or just whatever. This is something very concrete, love consciousness. It's something very permanent, and it's doesn't make you not have the capacity to function in a modern, busy world. It's quite the opposite. You're very present in a modern, busy world. And no, do not change the word, because, of course, that's what fights with the intellect. But if you change that, the intellect's already won. It's like, oh, and I want to do something radically different in order to change. Did that make sense?
Yeah,
No.
that was really good.
Muscle madness.
It makes sense, and yet, in my mind, it's really a judgment. You've just now judged that it is the best. So you're still, in my mind, you're still judging that it's up here. It's the
Yes.
ultimate, as opposed to here, 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 here. And I see that it's best, but
Well, you know, the beautiful thing about my system is, the system that I teach is you don't have to believe it. In fact, you can think, praise love for this moment in its perfection, or praise love for this moment in its perfection. Oh, that girl, oh, she's just too much. And praise love for this moment in its perfection. Well, it's all right for her, but my life's a disaster. Praise love for this moment. You don't have to believe what you're thinking. You just have to do it mechanically and have a result. See what the results are, and then make your choice. Yeah? It's not like a way of convincing you that I'm right, because I didn't think I was right initially either.
no, actually, I think you're right.
Oh, thank you. Oh, I feel so much better. It's okay. Thank you.
Did you have a teacher? Did you come out of any particular tradition? And does that matter or not? You know?
Firstly, it's a good question. No, I didn't have a specific teacher. I think the really big advantage that I had compared to a lot of people is I was at a point of, that's it, whatever it takes, and I was like this. I was like a puppy. I was so innocent and open to listen to absolutely everyone, because I just desperately wanted to change. I did not have one specific teacher. I had many teachers, and I was very present and listening to everyone. And no, you don't have to. If you see someone and you admire them, obviously you're open to listen to them, but that's up to the individual. I am a teacher. I have thousands of students, but I always point the finger back at their heart, you know. I say, I cannot heal you. You have to do it yourself. I can just give you the tools.
I have a comment and two quick things.
Yes.
One of our wonderful speakers had a great thought for us in saying, think with your heart and feel with your mind. And it really reverses, I think, one's reality, gets things in perspective. And two quick questions. Do you have a center here in the U.S.? And how did you end up in Uruguay?
No, yes, that was good. You should absolutely think with your heart. And no, I don't have a centre in the United States. I just have 2 books. And I do have students in the United States that come to Manzanillo in Mexico. And I find that very accessible for them if they want to go there. I'm sure in the future I will have a centre here, but I've been more focused in the South or in Latin America. What was the other question? I'm sorry. Oh, okay. It was a funny thing because I started in Venezuela and everywhere I went it became too small. So as a consequence, and then I was in Colombia, I was telling the ladies at the table, I lived in a red zone in Colombia, which means there was paramilitary and guerrilla and drug police and everything. That became too small. And then I had a horse in Uruguay. And one day I was riding along the beach. It's a hard life, no? And I looked up and there was this horrible hotel, but horrible, pink hotel, abandoned. And I thought, oh, that would make a great place for a centre. I wonder if it's for sale. And so I sold my property in Australia and we bought this centre in Uruguay and now we transformed it. It's beautiful, but really beautiful. And that's how I ended up there, yeah. But I used to teach in Uruguay and Argentina before. Now I have lots of horses. Yes.
You mentioned that when you, if you have a problem that you let it go or you heal yourself? And what method, what type of, how did you actually do that physically?
Through feeling. You know, a thing I teach people to do is to go in and to feel. Because behind everything that's like a drama or an obsession or an addiction, there's always an emotion. And when I move that emotion, it liberates it. Sometimes you might have to do it a few times. Like, for example, like if someone dies, we have to go into a process of mourning, no? Well, this is like an internal process of mourning where we've lost ourselves. It's not so extreme, but there will be emotions that come up. So about feeling and expressing. You know, when people come to my centres, they spend a lot of time just talking, you know, to the teachers or sharing and feeling what's going on by just exposing everything and allowing it to go. It's not that you just intellectually go, oh, well, I'm not going to think about that anymore, because it comes back. You know, I can't avoid things. I can't keep doing that, because that's what we do most of our lives. We just justify it in our head and do that. But every time I do that, I'm separating myself from a part of my universe. So I have to embrace it, feel it, express it, be vulnerable with the people I love and really share what's going on and how I feel, which is hard because we're always scared we're going to be disapproved or abandoned, and let it all go. And then we start to create union. So it's time. I'm finished. I'm up. Thank you very much for having me. Gracias. Thank you. Oh, lovely. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh. Thank you, thank you. Actually, I just want to say one more thing. I bought a bag of movies that I'm going to leave.